Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rahman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we'll be talking about this very reckless uh, statement coming from the new army chief, where he said that if the Parliament of India allows, we can attack and we can take Azad Jammu Kashmir as well as Gilgit-Baltistan. Now, this is a very reckless statement and was totally denounced by the Foreign Office. Now, the point is that when we look at Pakistan and its vulnerability, especially in that region, though we do understand that our forces are very battle hardened, they have been able to eradicate this menace of terrorism from Pakistani soil. But yet, when we compare ourselves with the Indian Army or their motives for that matter, I mean, they have a certain design. It's a larger country, it's a nuclear power. Look at the amount of troops they have actually deployed in that part of the world. The fresh troops all along the LOC as well as the other working boundary. The kind of military assets they have installed there as well. You're talking about BrahMos missiles for that matter, or other heavy artillery that has been deployed, or armored corps divisions for that matter. So that is something which we really need to ponder upon. We need to understand what exactly is brewing in the mind. I mean, forget about the military, which used to have a very different role in India. But now the military of India has been politicized to an extent that every single decision the government is going to take, they will follow it. And not only the military of India, even the judiciary of India. We all know what has happened recently, but the point is that now you always had a very hostile neighbor in your east, and obviously we have to live with this fact, but at the same time we need to understand what sort of measures and we need to take and what sort of parameters we need to work within. We talk about allies, we talk about the global interests, we talk about the alignments. They're all changing with the passing time. It's always about the interest of a country. There is nothing such as blood relationship. That is a reality. The concept of Muslim brotherhood, primarily, that's also fading away. When you see Muslim countries attacking each other, killing each other, whether it's Shia versus Sunni or Sunni versus somebody else, this is what the name of the game is. Now, we have to look inward and we need to look after the fault lines which we have earlier developed, unfortunately, and we need to make sure that they should not be exposed. And even if they are, we need to look into the real issues and problems and come up with some sort of solutions and remedies for that. Well, before I introduce my panelists, let me read two tweets. One is by the DGISPR, Major General Asif Ghafoor. He says that statements by the Indian Chief of Army Staff to undertake military action across the line of control are routine rhetoric for the domestic audiences to get out of the ongoing internal turmoil. And we will definitely be talking about the internal turmoil in India in detail. But then he says that Pakistan armed forces are fully prepared to respond to any act of Indian aggression. Now, that is an official statement from the military of Pakistan, where General Asif Ghafoor very categorically mentioned that we are fully prepared for any misadventure. The Prime Minister has also hinted that there is a probability, and a very high probability, I would say, of a false flag operation exactly in those times when there is a lot of tension in the Middle East. There's another statement from the state SCA. It says, closely following USAM BINDIA, Bindia, this is some Bindia, and other foreign diplomats' recent trip to Jammu and Kashmir, it says important step. It's an important step. We remain concerned by the detention of political leaders and residents and internet restrictions. We look forward to a return of normalcy in the AGW. Now, talking about the restoration of the internet services or the lifting of curfew, as we all know, that it's been almost 160 days. Now we are looking at almost 5 months, 4 months, and this is constant, this is continuing, and the kind of misery the local people are going through. Now that is something we should all be very concerned about. Well, there is a lot more we'll be talking about. Again, as I earlier mentioned, that the Foreign Office in Islamabad has also denounced Narawan's statement as reckless. But why did he issue this statement? What was the purpose? What's the motive behind it? Is it just a rhetoric to sort of build pressure on Pakistan? But a lot is very important, especially regarding the FATF in the next month and a couple of other allegations on Pakistan. So we'll be talking about that. We have with us in our studio, on my right is Rauf Hasan Saab. He's a senior columnist, senior writer, senior analyst. Sir, thank you very much
Thank you
for
very
taking
much.
out the
Very
time and being a
kind.
part of our show. We also have with us Javed Siddiq Saab. Again, needs no introduction as a senior anchor person, senior journalist. So thank you very much, Javed Saab.
Thank you.
And we'll be also joining on the telephone line with Michael Kugelman. Michael Kugelman is the Deputy Director of Asia Programs. Thank you very much, Michael, for taking out your time and being a part of our show as well, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So, if you allow me, sir, let's start off from Michael Kugelman. Michael, now, first of all, there was this very reckless statement from none other than the new Chief of Army Staff of India. He says that if the Parliament of India allows, the Indian Army can cross the line of control, get inside the Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, and can take over the entire region. Now, how would you look at that statement, sir? As they are practically challenging the sovereignty of another country, sir. And primarily, you're talking about this is year 220, sir, 2020. We're not living in the ancient times. Your take?
Well, I think that we need to take these statements from the new Indian Army chief in the broader context of what we've been hearing from the Indian government in recent months. And that is that a number of very senior officials in India have been suggesting that it's just a matter of time before India could try to, quote unquote, reclaim Pakistan-administered Kashmir. So I would not actually characterize the Army chief's statements as reckless. I think he was simply repeating what the civilian leadership in India has been stating quite frequently in recent months. And he did say, the Army chief did say, the government, if Parliament wants it, then we will go in and so on. And let's remember that just several months ago, someone as high up in the Indian ranks as the the External Affairs Minister, Jaishankar, he had said that this is a part of Kashmir that's a part of India, and we expect that one day we'll have jurisdiction over it. So I think that this is nothing new. Of course, this is rhetoric that we've heard from the Indian side many times, though. As I think I've told you on your show before, what strikes me is that it seems that the frequency with which very senior Indian officials, both civilians and now on the military side, are making these comments, the frequency has intensified. And that perhaps is something to watch out for in the months ahead.
We need to watch out for sure, sir. But Michael Kugelman, tell me another thing. When you look at these statements, I mean, Rawat Bipin, the previous chief, now he's the defense head of the Indian Army. Primarily, he used to have similar statements. So the case of this guy, it seems that, this is the rhetoric they're following. But at the same time, when you look at the response from the Pakistani government, forget about what DGISP said, forget about the Foreign Office, the Prime Minister I'm talking about, he said there's a very high probability of a false flag operation inside the Pakistani territory. We've also heard that they have cut certain lines and they want to penetrate inside the Azad Kashmir. And this is the kind of mindset they have at the moment. They have accumulated a lot of forces on the LOC along with a lot of military assets which you normally use when you invade another country. So looking at these features and these developments, do you fear that anything can trigger before the month of March, because a lot of their politicians normally talk about the month of March?
Well, certainly I don't want to speculate too much, though I think that unfortunately nothing can be ruled out. I mean, if there's one thing that strikes me about the Indian government, and particularly Modi 2.0, the second Modi administration, it's that this is a government that is willing to carry out threats that had long been made in the past that have not actually been executed. So if you look at something like the Article 370 repeal, the BJP had been threatening to do that for quite some time, but it finally only did it, last year. And then if you look at these other policies like the citizenship law, the NRC, these have been in the works for quite some time, but only recently has this Indian government moved forward. And as I said before, it's a government that is aggressively pursuing this Hindu nationalist agenda. So what that means for the type of question you've asked me, I think certainly things cannot be ruled out. I was very struck by the very big news from India over the weekend, which I'm sure you're well aware of, in which a very senior Indian security official posted in Kashmir was arrested on links of ties to a Kashmiri militant, and there were reports that they were all headed toward Delhi, which brought attention to the possibility of having some type of Indian state-level involvement in some type of planned attack, which could suggest false flags. I don't know what. I don't want to speculate too much, but my bottom line here is that I think things that we perhaps could have ruled out in previous years from the Indian government in terms of threats, we can't necessarily rule them out now. So really, I think anything is possible, but I'm not someone that's going to speculate about the likelihood or the possibility of a false flag. But nothing can be ruled out.
Michael, we also have with us Javed Siddique Saab, senior journalist from the Novava Group, and we also have with us your friend Rauf Hassan Saab.
Hi, Michael.
Hi there, Rauf. Good to hear you.
How are you? Good to have you on the program.
Now, let me take the same question to Rauf Saab. Rauf Saab, your take on the same point, sir. How do you see things develop?
I'm going to state this in the reverse, basically. What Michael has said, is all very logical. But I'm going to state the reverse. Is there a prospect of war between India and Pakistan now or in the future? My answer would be no.
India knows is that so?
Yes. India knows that, Pakistan knows that. Because a war between India and Pakistan means mutual destruction. There's going to be they will not be able to take Pakistani-administered Kashmir or Gilgit-Baltistan. Basically, it means a death knell for both countries. So they know that, deep down, know that. But why is it that we are hearing all these statements? We're hearing all these statements because, number one, there's ample turmoil within India at this moment in time. And if you remember, I'm sure you must be aware of the fact that for the last 2 months, almost 2 months, there has been consistent firing across the LOC line of control. There has been no interlude. For almost 2 months now, there is consistent firing across the LOC. So the pressure is being mounted in Pakistan because of the internal crises in India. And there isn't just one crisis, there are multiple crises there, which the Indian government is trying to combat. And I think with the passage of time, it appears that it may not be possible for them to combat it. Kashmir was one crisis, but look at the Citizens Act and all that kind of stuff. It spread right across India. So it is not just confined to Kashmir, Indian Kashmir, it is spread right across India. And Indian government is coming under increasing pressure to take it back. In addition to all this, the Indian Supreme Court has also ruled in the last 2 days that whatever is being done in the Indian administered Kashmir has to be reviewed. They have not said, that the Indian government should reverse it, but they have asked the Indian government to review it.
Are
that
they talking about the
Indian Supreme Court?
No. Are you talking about this article? The abrogation of the article?
No, I'm talking.
Or they are talking
no,
about.
I'm talking about
regarding the internet.
The lockdown.
The lockdown.
I'm talking about the lockdown, complete lockdown in India, which has now persisted for more than 5 months.
Yeah, I think I saw this movie.
More than 5 months.
I saw this very important report on BBC on this. BBC is covering it. Yeah,
that's right. So, but Pakistan, on the other hand, I must say, it has repeatedly reiterated its commitment to peace. Both between India and Pakistan, as well as in the larger region. In the event of this current crisis, that concerning Iran and the US, again it is trying to play the peace game. I think Foreign Minister Qureshi is on a visit to Iran, Saudi Arabia, and then after that he's proceeding to America. So I think Pakistan is taking the right position. We're not talking about war, but let me say that this
we don't want to become any parties, sir.
No, but we're not talking about war. As a matter of fact, we are trying to repudiate the prospect of war, and our statements are coming only in retaliation to what the Indians are saying, and the frequency of these Indian statements, unfortunately, has increased. And I think I would say that this is commensurate with the increasing pressure that the government is feeling from within India. So,
is there any probability that just to divert the attention from the real issues, they can opt for such a...
This is exactly what I'm saying, basically, that this is commensurate with the pressure that they are feeling from within India. So it is trying to divert the attention, one way or the other. But having said this, having said that there is no prospect of war between India and Pakistan at the end of the day, it is not something that Pakistan can take lightly. So, but I must also insist, that this kind of statement, should come from Pakistan's Foreign Office. They are the ones basically, who should be tackling these problems. If there's a statement, they should come up with a statement of their own. Of course, the level of preparedness, the state of preparedness has to be there. And I understand that all militaries are always in a state of preparedness to fight a war. So there's no need to reiterate the fact that we're prepared, we're ready, and we'll, to face any challenge. Of course, militaries are supposed to be ready to face challenges, which are opposed to national sovereignty of a country. So read it in that context. No real prospect of war. Then of course, but there could be a spark off. There could be an accidental thing. Like for example, recently, a plane has been brought down accidentally. There could be an accidental sort of breakdown. So one has to be ready.
One has to be careful. One has to be very cautious also. Now, Javed Saab, your take on this point, and let me also add another question. Javed Saab, this map of India, ever since we were students, so we used to see that the Kashmir was, Pakistan was green and India was pink for that matter. This Kashmir used to be pink and green.
Disputed territory.
The disputed territory. Now, sir, what they've done is they've not only talked about the disputed territory, they have added Gilgit-Baltistan and they have added Azad Kashmir also into it, sir. And it's a very funny looking north and the northeast part of the Indian map.
I think the Indians have been doing it in the past as well, and they've been claiming that entire disputed territory is a part of India. And when the CPAC project was initiated by China, they said that some of the projects have been initiated in Azad Kashmir, which is a disputed territory, and the Chinese should be stopped from doing it. And I remember that once I visited Azad Kashmir, and a Chinese firm was building a road leading up to the Neelam Valley and other areas. And one of the engineers told me that the Indians raised this issue with the Chinese leadership, that why are you building a road here, constructing a road here? It is a disputed territory. So they have been making these claims time and again. But the fact is that yes, it is a disputed territory, and yes, it needs to be resolved, and it needs to be resolved under the UN Security Council resolutions. And Pakistan has repeatedly said that we are ready for a talk on the Kashmir issue with India. We will sit and we'll talk on this. And we want a settlement of the Kashmir issue through talks, not through the guns. So Pakistan's position has been very consistent on that. So I believe that this rhetoric that the DGISI has mentioned, ISPR has mentioned in his tweet, that the Indian Army Chief is basically is resorting to this rhetoric only to satisfy and appease the crowds on the streets of India, because after this the amendment bill, citizen amendment bill, huge number of people have taken to the roads and they've come out to protest this Citizen Act. And even the foreigners, the tourists who were there in India, they joined these protesting people, and they said
Even
that this is discriminatory.
Even the Sikhs, even the non-Muslims,
all other minorities are there. The Indian intellectuals like Arundhati Roy and others, they are also on the roads. And even the United States of America has expressed its concern. The European Union has also expressed concern over these kind of discriminatory law. But Modi government doesn't care about these things. I mean, it's very unfortunate that it is totally insensitive to the international reaction as well. But that is driving India to a kind of isolation on the global level, because this Hindutva philosophy is isolating India. Although India was on an agenda to isolate Pakistan internationally, but India itself is now on its way to be isolated internationally because of these actions. The revocation of Article 370, and following that, this Citizen Amendment Bill. And the world is watching and they're stunned by what Modi government is doing in India. So I think that this kind of rhetoric that is coming from Indian Army Chief and his predecessor, who is now the Chief of Defense Staff, Bipin Rawat, General Bipin Rawat, both were making these kind of statements. And I remember that once the former Army Chief of India, Bipin Rawat, said that we are ready to take on both
India
Pakistan
the
and
same
China.
time, yeah. It's China and Pakistan, yeah.
Yes, China and Pakistan. So these kind of statements come from these people, and they emanate from New Delhi, from politicians, from the military leaders. But I think we need to be very cautious and careful. We need to be prepared for any eventuality. As you mentioned, that the fence that India has erected on this LOC, it has been breached on 5 different places.
Yes.
And
what's the purpose of that now?
That's one. BrahMos missiles have
They
been
have
deployed.
been installed there, yes?
Yes, and other missiles. And you know, the posturing is very dangerous. And a situation does exist which can erupt into a kind of skirmish on the borders, which could get out of control and become a full-fledged conventional war. And then the world, you know, the experts who keep an eye on this region, they say that even a conventional war can spin out of control and could become a nuclear showdown. So that is what the world is worried about. So we need to take care of these things. The Indians might have tried to do something if the Iran-American conflict
could
had
have escalated, yeah.
escalated, because the world attention would have been on that side. So India could have done something here. But it looks that the situation has de-escalated between India and Iran for the time being. So the world,
US and Iran.
US and Iran.
US Iran, and so therefore I think now the situation is again on Kashmir. The European Union members of the parliament were invited. Some of the diplomats were invited there, and they said we are ready to go to Indian-held Kashmir. But we want to talk to the APHC leadership and the politicians there and the common people, which the Indian government didn't allow them.
All right.
So, you know, what kind of things they are trying to hide from the world.
I mean, Javed Saab, there are issues regarding their economy. They had flushed everything. They were expecting a growth rate of 8% plus.
Gone down to
in
4.5.
reality, exactly.
And-
And you're talking about a huge economy.
And today the inflation has gone up to 11% in India. The
In India.
inflation has gone up.
Double digit in India, that's
Yeah.
something.
So,
and on top, this current
They're
crisis.
they're
and so
paying a
much
price. I mean,
happening,
Modi is
yeah.
paying its price because he had come with the slogan of, make in India and shining
Economic
India
prosperity,
and
yeah,
economic
shining
prosperity
India,
and all
India on
that.
the move.
But it has all, fallen flat. So he has to respond. He has to answer to the people of India that the promises that he had made to improve the
So
economy.
let's take this debate to Michael Kugelman and ask him whether this current crisis can lead into something like which we call either a nuclear issue or something, because a lot of people believe that Indians believe that when you talk about the overall strategy of Pakistan, we have adopted whatever they have had in mind, we had a counter policy, we had a counter strategy. But when it comes to the nuclear issue, sir, they always wanted to check the threshold of Pakistan. So let's see, Michael, do you believe that the Indians really want to sort of put pressure on Pakistan and really want to see the kind of threshold which Pakistan has, sir? Are they aware of the reality, or they are still dreaming, sir?
Well, no, I do not think that we have to fear any type of nuclear exchange. Unfortunately, nothing can ever be ruled out. But absolutely, India is certainly trying to pressure Pakistan. And I think one thing that we've seen over the last few years is that there is the capacity for conventional exchanges of hostilities under the nuclear umbrella. I mean, if you looked at what happened just last year, the Pulwama-Balakot exchange. I mean, we had several notable developments there. We had India using airstrikes across the line of control in KPK. It's the first time that had happened since 1971. And of course, Pakistan responded in kind with its own limited strikes over the border. So clearly, I think what that makes clear is that these are two countries that are willing to use force, use conventional force within the nuclear threshold. And of course, the bad sign about that is that the more you do that, the more you could escalate, and the more you escalate, you could get to the point where you have to start worrying about a nuclear exchange. But, you know, I do think that cooler heads will prevail. I echo the points that were made by other panelists that India has a lot of reason to give pause to the idea of engaging in the type of adventurism that could lead to a war, much less a nuclear war. You know, it's a country that's suffering through one of its worst economic crises in many years. And on the one hand, you could argue, sure, perhaps it would want to try to get a rally around the flag effect, to try to do something provocative that would get the type of support from its rank and file that it worries it could lose as the economic problems worsen. But, you know, I think India, much like Pakistan for that matter, literally cannot afford a war. It's just a very difficult time with the economic pains on both sides. So, you know, I think for me, when thinking about scenarios, gaming out what we could expect in types of worst case scenarios, you know, something that I think we do have to worry about is that India could try to test Pakistan by, you know, for example, trying to seize a small amount of territory in AJK and see what happens after that, see how Pakistan may respond. Now, how they would do that, I don't know. Can we rule it out? No, not at all, based on the conversations we've been having and the rhetoric we've been having. But I do think that you know, this is more rhetoric than anything else. I think that India is trying to distract the population's attention from these very significant economic problems and also the social unrest that we're seeing because of the Hindu nationalist strategy. But that one scenario, this idea that India could try to test Pakistan by trying to lay claim to a small amount of territory in AJK and seeing how Pakistan responds. And of course, how Pakistan would respond would go a long way toward determining how much escalation there could be in that type of scenario.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael. I know that you have to leave as well, but thank you very much for your participation in our program. Thank you very much once again.
Thank
a very
you.
clear-cut analysis. He says that there is a possibility, there's a probability that Indians can end up, you know, taking a part of a territory and then seeing what Pakistan does in reaction. And whatever Pakistan does, and they will think about a response after that also. Now, so in this case, last time when they came, I mean, I'm talking about the so-called operation they did in Pakistan, inside our territory in KPK. The jets came, nobody got killed, they threw a few bombs and the fuel tanks, and they went back. And then 27th of February, sir, 10 o'clock in the morning, we responded. We could have responded in a much, much more aggressive way. And according to very reliable sources, sir, very reliable sources, in reality, the MiG did not fire a single missile, sir. It had 4, 2 on each side. They did not. So we have those missiles. And secondly, sir, we had 6 of the other jets locked. We could have shot 8 in total, but that could have really escalated, and then things would have gotten out of hand. But they know our capability, they know our capacity, and then stupid statements that, oh, if we had Rafales, or if I had that, you know, or if I was this big, I would have done that. But what I'm saying is, sir, battle is different, war is different, and then obviously there are different approaches to it. But in this case, sir, obviously we responded, and that was a must. What if they do something of this sort again, sir? They have breached 5 different areas, you know, as far as the fencing is concerned.
Yeah, that's it. That happened about 6 months ago.
So
it's not a recent development. What would be a more serious thing? The one that they did in February, or if they were to occupy a certain part of Pakistani Kashmir?
Pakistani Kashmir, sir.
All right. So what was Pakistan's response, you know, when they allegedly fired a few bombs, you know, on a madrasa? What was Pakistan's response? We
went after them.
We responded, as you've said. You know. So if they were to engage in something which is going to be more serious, like occupation of Pakistani territory, what would Pakistan do? We would respond even more fiercely, even more proactively. And Indians are aware of it. So my thesis of there being no prospect of full-fledged war is based in this, that both countries are fully aware of the other's capabilities.
But
What Indians are
conventional
interested
war
in,
after a certain level can lead to anything. Sir.
that is, but they would not, I think Indians would not take it to that level, because they are only interested in keeping continuous pressure on Pakistan, and that can come from low to medium intensity violence, war. And this is what they're engaging in with Pakistan at this moment in time. Like I said, in the last 2 months, there has been no respite across the LOC in multiple sectors, along the Pakistani and Indian border. So, they're engaging in that. So they will continue that. But this, I don't think there is a prospect of this expanding into a full-fledged war, because that means mutual annihilation, that mutual destruction. So Indians know that, we know that. And Pakistan has a tactical superiority in nuclear arsenal over India. Let's not also forget that. And they're fully aware of it, like you and I are aware of it here, Javed Saab is, they're also fully aware of it. This is not hidden from anybody. We have a tactical superiority over them in terms of nuclear capability. So I don't think, yes, I think that immense, we underestimate the pressure on the Indian government at this moment in time. I mean, Modi had come dreaming that he was going to just do everything that the previous governments had not been able to do.
Rauf Saab, I'll just give you one example.
Right.
We all know what's been happening, Javed Saab, in Kashmir for the last 70, 72 years, right, sir? Look at the number of people who've been killed by the Indian, I would always use the word trigger-happy forces. They love to, it's as if they're hunting, they're enjoying it. Just pellet guns like firing on their faces. Just imagine this is not normal. And nothing happened because all these draconian laws, they support them and they can get away with that, right, sir? The moment there was this plane shot by the Iranians or by whoever, sir, I don't care, but as long as those 176 precious lives were lost, that's what matters. There were protests from these families and all. And now, President Donald Trump, obviously they have their own interest, I understand, tweeting not only in English, but also in Persian. And saying,
yes.
well, do not harm the people who are protesters, do not do this. And I mean, just building up pressure, and the whole Western media is covering it and just multiplying the actual reality with 10 and presenting on our TV as if what is happening in Iran. What is happening in Kashmir, nobody's bothered.
India is no America. And this is exactly the point that I wanted to make, when we had this interruption. The world is not going to come to Pakistan's help. The world is not going to. The world, it comes up, like, for example, the State Department has issued a statement, that you read at the beginning of the program. That's all they're going to do. If Pakistan had done any of this that India has done in the last 6 months, what would have been the world's reaction?
I mean, they would have had so many groups, observer groups, name it, and they would have been here.
What has been the world's reaction other than, of course, the media, which has been very critical of India? I have never seen, this is unprecedented, the way the media in the world has criticized India and continues to criticize India. Otherwise, the world only comes up with facile statements, which don't mean anything. So India is, there is pressure from within India, and together with that, there is no genuine criticism of Indian actions by the world. So that emboldens India to engage further in maintaining that level of belligerence with Pakistan, which is what my thesis basically, but it is not going to, boil over into a full-scale war, because the Indians know their lack of capability in dealing with Pakistan, if God forbid there is a war between the two countries. That's not happening, but they will keep the pressure on Pakistan, they will maintain it, they will keep upping it. It'll, it's going to be an up and down thing, between India and Pakistan, but I don't see a prospect of full-time peace. I don't see a prospect of returning to the table to negotiate, to talk to each other. I don't see that happening.
So the situation is going to remain fluid, it's going to remain the way it is.
So we have to be ready. We have to be very, very ready to combat and all that.
Is this the kind of situation we're going to live?
Well, this situation...
Insecurity prevails, unfortunately.
It has been there for years. It's not a new development. In Indian-held Kashmir, we have seen atrocities being committed against the Kashmiris, innocent Kashmiris. Young Kashmiris being kidnapped, and then the families would find their dead bodies somewhere lying on the roads or in a remote area. Almost 100,000 Kashmiris have lost their lives in the last 10 to 12 years, 15 years. And that has happened. The pellet guns that you are mentioning, they were used by Modi government. Previously, there was no incident of using pellet guns against the Kashmiris and distorting their faces and all that. And that has been noted in the West, and the Western media has come out with a huge criticism against the use of pellet
What
guns.
was the end result? Nothing, sir. They're still doing the same.
So, they're doing it, of course. But, it's like in Palestine, what Israelis are doing to the Palestinians. The same strategy is being replicated by the Modi government
Most
in
likely
India and
they have
held
these
Kashmir.
top advisors from the Israelis
They have
working
this.
inside
They
Kashmir,
have
sir.
this advice, and so they are
Reports
emulating.
reports. I mean, there are a lot of reports which suggest that there are people in very different uniform, different looking people
So
with the Indian soldiers,
Members
with the
from the
Indian army.
RSS.
they are replicating the same model which has been adopted by Israel in occupied territory of Palestine. So I think that it is going to go on for a long period of time. But the fact is that the world has noted the atrocities and inhuman treatment that is being meted out to the Kashmiris in Indian held Kashmir. 161 days have passed.
Yes, sir.
The Kashmiris are suffering. They have lived this horrible experience, and they are continuing to face it, and they're not relenting. That is the strength of the Kashmiris, that they are facing it, and they are basically ready to face all kind of situations in Indian and Kashmir, and the world is watching. And the human rights organizations, the media in the Western countries, they are raising their voice. Not the governments, not at the state level, but they are raising their voice. And in all major capitals of Europe, there have been protests, and massive protest, and it's very effective. So that's there. But Pakistan has to live with this situation for some time. And I think
So when you say Javed sir, sometime,
That's a
you
very
know, maybe years, 2 to 3, 4 years maybe. But in such struggles, in such patches of history, you have to live with these kind of situations.
sir, do you actually see, Javed sir, you've been into journalism for such a long time. I mean, mashallah, you're one of those names, I mean, we look up to. Javed sir, and I'm sure you've been writing about it, covering this issue for a very long time. Do you see this issue being solved at some stage without a war, by peaceful means, by negotiations, at some stage, or no?
Well, I think if the world, the big powers, the United Nations Security...
Big powers will not support you, sir.
Okay.
That's the reality.
Okay, then the possibility of war is there. But
is the war only solution other than negotiations,
no,
sir? Or do we have another contingency plan like the Indians have, sir?
The negotiations, the Americans, what they have done in Afghanistan, they are come to a negotiated, I mean, they are now trying to negotiate a settlement with the Taliban.
Face saving.
So Pakistan and India too have to come to a negotiation table on the issues of Kashmir and other areas. Now the Modi,
But we are not dealing with the sensible neighbors, so that's another unfortunate part.
But Modi doctrine, to my mind, is not going to be very useful for Narendra Modi, because he has tried all those tactics to suppress the voice of Kashmiris, to basically, they have annexed Kashmir to the Indian Union.
Yes.
But the Kashmiris are not accepting it. The world is watching this thing. So, you
There's
cannot...
a difference between land and people. You can take care of, you can just go and invade the land, but you can't
the
invade
fact
people.
that 162 days have passed and there's curfew. And why, if the Indians, the Kashmiris are willing
Because
to be...
if the curfew is lifted, we all know what's going to happen there, sir.
A. B, that you are trying to portray the situation in Indian held Kashmir as normal. Many a time they have said, oh, the things
Court
are
has
not...
challenged it, sir, the Supreme Court.
So, the things are not normal. So how long can you continue with this kind of situation, keeping your own people under curfew and committing these kind of atrocities on them, and lockdown complete, internet services suspended? How long can you persist with that kind of thing? I think there's going to be a time when the world will speak about it, and the pressure is going to be mounted on India to sit down and solve the issue. And it's not easy to say that, oh, the world will close its eyes on this situation for a very long period of
To
time.
be very honest, sir, this United Nation, I mean, so many other bodies, even OIC, I mean, these are useless,
Obviously.
useless bodies for useless exercises, sir. Last closing comment from you, Rauf sir.
So, a conflict which is rooted in hatred, as unfortunately the conflict between India and Pakistan is rooted, is the most difficult to address. I don't see any prospect of us getting to the table for in the near future. I don't see any prospect of any of the world powers, pressurizing India to start negotiations with Pakistan. I don't see that happening, and I don't see that happening in a long time, which is very unfortunate. But there's only one thing. We recently conducted a track 2 dialogue with India, which was after a gap of almost 5 years. And the different thing about this track was that we had the young people representing both India and Pakistan.
And what was the difference?
And I've seen immense desire for peace.
From both sides?
Immense desire for peace. So my recommendation would be that if somehow we could take the case to the young people of the two countries.
The next generation.
The next generation. They will be able to tide over the hatred, which our forefathers, both India and Pakistan,
So
they have
the
suffered
sort of
from.
hatred Modi and his
this-
government has inculcated over a period of time, sir, that will take time to go away.
As I said, it's a generational issue basically. Like for example, from generation to generation, the level intensity of hatred that subsides. Which is what I said. It happened about 4 months ago, and we are planning to hold the second round. In India. Hopefully, we shall be able to go there in due course of time. I saw on both sides. I saw people. I said, "What the heck?" I mean, they said, "What the heck?" I mean, why have we wasted our lives? We wasted 72 years.
And the
to try to get
resources.
to the table.
And the resources.
So,
I mean,
the resources and so much else basically. The poverty has increased, disenfranchisement has increased, I mean, none of the two governments, has been able to do anything for the poor, the marginalized communities of this country, which was, in fact, the priority concern of the youth from both countries.
Absolutely,
So I
should
think
be
that
there.
is my hope. I would like to vest my hope there that they shall be able to tide over the hatred.
But the past
factor.
track record clearly indicates that there have been umpteen rounds of negotiations on the issue of Kashmir between India and Pakistan. And sometimes we were very close to finding a solution.
Musharraf's
Under
time.
Musharraf, Mr. Kasuri,
Kasuri sahab, yeah.
he has written a book saying that we were so close to a
Almost
negotiated settlement. So I think the world really wants that two countries, nuclear countries, should not go to any war, even if it is conventional, because it can spin out of control. And they would like these two countries and the Kashmiris to sit and find a solution to it. And it cannot remain a festering wound for a very long period of time.
But
Unfortunately,
banking
it
on
is.
either the Muslim world or the international
No,
community
not-
to help
It's
us
going
in
to
doing
be
anything like
of
that,
no use,
I think
sir.
it's a false flag. I think
Absolutely.
ultimately at the end of the day, the two countries have to do it themselves.
Absolutely.
That is the reality.
There you go,
must
sir.
have to.
Anyway, Rauf sir, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That was a
Always.
pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
sir.
Always.
And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.